Vermont's most notorious career criminals is set to be released from prison, sparking fear and anger in a Northeast Kingdom community. Thank you for joining us at 6. I'm Darren Perrin.
And I'm Kat Villianzoni. 55-year-old Harley Breer has a lengthy criminal history and has served time in prison on multiple violent felonies, mostly aimed at women. Channel
3 News confirmed Breer will be released with plans to live in Canaan, a town of about 300 people in the far northeast corner of the state.
Channel 3's Cam Smith is following this story for us tonight and joins us live now in studio. Cam, when is he expected to be released?
Kat and Darren, a spokesperson from the Department of Corrections tells me Breer's release is delayed until at least next week. The news was first reported by freelance journalist Mike Donahue. Word of Breer's release has already sent shockwaves through the small rural town of Canaan.
We got a close, community here, and I don't think we need to be releasing a habitual offender like that into this community.
Harley Breer has been in and out of jail since the 1980s for crimes like kidnapping, sexual assault, and assault. He's been behind bars since his most recent arrest after a manhunt in 2021, serving the minimum amount of a 4 to 10-year sentence. He passed his minimum release date at the beginning of December, and while it's delayed, the Corrections Department has been preparing to release him on furlough.
That's a delay, so eventually after he serves his time, he's going to have to be released, but hopefully not released into the small community that barely has any police presence.
Essex County State's Attorney Vince Aluzzi also questions the decision to release Breer to live in Canaan.
The rural Northeast Kingdom, the town of Canaan, is not an appropriate placement for someone with Mr. Breer's history.
Aluzzi expressed frustration with the Department of Corrections for not notifying law enforcement in Essex County of the plan first. A notice from DOC did go out to law enforcement agencies in central Vermont, where Breer is from. Sources tell Channel 3 that notice states Breer is considered a high risk to reoffend. Aluzzi says his remote county is ill-equipped to keep track of an offender like Breer.
When you have a rural area with no major law enforcement presence and a Department of Corrections office that will supervise him almost an hour away, that spells trouble on the line.
Canaan is covered part-time by the Essex County Sheriff's Department and U.S. Border Patrol. If Breer is released, Aluzzi says it should be to a location with an adequate police presence, concerns he communicated to DOC Commissioner Nick Demmel, and residents hope they are heard too.
People's in jail, they ought to stay in jail, not loose to public peoples and do more harm. Eventually they're going to be doing it again.
Now, as we mentioned, Breer is not expected to be released until at least next week, but we were not told if the delay is in response to the public uproar. If Breer violates his furlough, he can be immediately brought back to prison to serve out his full sentence. Darren?
Cam, thank you. Channel 3 News has covered Harley Breer's violent past for decades. His list of crimes is long.
We're calling him dangerous. He is definitely a dangerous individual.
Breer's first brush with the law dates back to the 80s, and in 1990s, his first rape charge. Dozens of felony charges would follow, including kidnappings. In 1999, one of his most notorious, a brutal kidnapping case in Barrie. Breer abducted his ex-girlfriend's mother, tied her up, and was accused of sexually assaulting her before abandoning the woman in a remote hunting camp.
And what does that verdict?
Guilty.
That crime put him away for 8 years, but he did not leave prison rehabilitated. In 2011, Breer was arrested again for beating and raping another girlfriend and stealing her truck. He was captured in New Hampshire.
Try to print the news accurately if you can, guys. That'd be a switch, I know, but I appreciate it.
And while awaiting trial, he was arrested again for contacting his victims. His countless crimes got rolled into a plea deal in 2017, and he got credit for the 5 years he served, and his 20 to 45-year sentence was suspended. He was placed on probation for 45 years.
What plea do you enter? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
And claimed to be a changed man.
Some of it's maturity, some of it's I've grown up, but today I find myself looking at different things like house. I became a grandfather in the last 5 years, so I got a different set of priorities.
But 1 year later,
this is a witch hunt, and I cannot continue to go through this.
Breer was back in custody, accused of kidnapping and assault. And this time, more serious charges of being a habitual offender. He pleaded no contest and got probation again. And just about a year later, in 2021, Breer triggered a manhunt after cutting off his ankle bracelet and escaping house arrest.
We just consider, from his lengthy and violent history, he should be considered dangerous.
It would be another month before authorities would find Breer and arrest him.
Communities can sleep well tonight, and Mr. Breer's back in jail.
The then 53-year-old took another plea deal and was sentenced to 4 to 10 years in prison and 20 years of probation. And last month, with credit for time served, Breer reached his minimum release date. The Corrections Department lets inmates out after their minimum sentence if they have not racked up other charges in jail. As for why he hasn't received longer sentences, that's in part because Breer has been offered those plea deals. Prosecutors had a hard time bringing cases to trial because witnesses and victims were often reluctant to testify against him out of fear.